Iran is not defending anymore. It is breaking America and Israel. Something shifted in the Middle East, and almost nobody in mainstream media is talking about it the way it actually happened. Iran is not reacting anymore. Iran is dictating. And the retired United States Army Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, the man who served as Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell, is laying out the raw, unfiltered truth that official channels will never broadcast. Within the next 15 minutes, the viewer will walk away knowing 3 critical scenarios, the hidden mechanics behind recent strikes that could reshape the entire region, and the kind of exclusive analysis that the Pentagon and primetime anchors are actively burying. Behind closed-doors negotiations, economic traps, real threats building under the surface, this is not speculation. This is sourced intelligence from a man who spent decades inside the machine. Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that like button. It matters more than you think. Seriously, it does. We appreciate every single one of you. Now let's get into it. Hezbollah's comeback and the collapse of Israeli strategy, the narrative that Hezbollah was broken, finished off by the pager and phone explosions, collapsed the moment the group re-emerged, stronger and more precise than before. At the center of Lawrence Wilkerson's analysis sits an uncomfortable reality for Tel Aviv. Hezbollah did not simply survive, it evolved. Working in tight coordination with Iranian forces, the group received not only weapons but intelligence pipelines that allowed it to operate around Israeli blockades, with a level of sophistication that Israeli planners apparently did not anticipate. Wilkerson does not soften his words. You know, the idea was that those exploding mobile phones would eliminate the threat. But no, they're back in business, he says with a sharp edge that carries both sarcasm and genuine alarm. He makes a direct accusation. Israel violated the ceasefire first, deliberately triggering an escalation and opening the door to full-scale retaliation. According to the colonel, Hezbollah has shifted its targeting doctrine, striking Israeli Defense Forces military installations while consciously avoiding civilian concentrations, a distinction that contrasts sharply with the pattern of Israeli operations in southern Lebanon. Israel, Wilkerson argues, is repeating the same errors from its previous Lebanese campaigns, absorbing casualties that include destroyed equipment and personnel losses while gaining nothing strategically. The hidden mechanics here are not accidental. Iran has built a supply chain that runs through underground tunnel systems and maritime corridors, a logistics network that allows Hezbollah to sustain prolonged military operations even under intensive aerial bombardment. This is not improvised. This is a decades-long infrastructure project that no amount of precision strikes has been able to fully dismantle. Politically, the picture is stark. Israel, in Wilkerson's view, refuses to learn from its own history. Each invasion of Lebanon has produced the same result: tactical losses, rising domestic opposition inside Israel, and steadily eroding international backing. And behind the military posture, there is an economic driver: control over resource-rich territories, including the natural gas deposits that lie beneath the Mediterranean Sea. The logic is colonial in nature, the risk is catastrophic, and the outcome, further destabilization threatening United States allies like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, is already materializing. Trump's hollow promises and the complete breakdown of diplomatic trust, Lawrence Wilkerson takes apart President Donald Trump's claim that Iran was calling the White House and offering deals. He calls it exactly what it is: domestic propaganda, crafted for an American audience that wants to believe their president is winning. Iran has made it absolutely clear they are not negotiating because the United States cannot be trusted, Wilkerson states flatly, and he backs that up with 2 specific incidents that the mainstream press largely ignored. The first, an Israeli strike on June 13th executed precisely when Iranian officials were preparing for a meeting scheduled for June 16th. The second, the incident of February 28th, just days before the Geneva negotiations set for March 2nd, negotiations that were sabotaged by pre-planned military action. Wilkerson is explicit. These were not coincidences or intelligence failures. These were deliberate operations designed to kill any diplomatic progress and manufacture justification for further escalation. Iran's foreign minister, cited directly by Wilkerson, left nothing ambiguous. "We are not asking for a ceasefire. We see no reason to negotiate with the United States. We talked to them twice, and both times they attacked us in the middle of those talks." That is not the language of a nation looking for an exit. That is the language of a nation that has made a strategic decision. Wilkerson goes further. He argues that Trump has moved from vague promises to demanding unconditional surrender, attempting to channel Winston Churchill without possessing Churchill's material leverage. What it actually reflects, in the Colonel's reading, is a leader trying to project strength abroad while masking accelerating problems at home. Economic contraction, a debt load that is structurally unsustainable, and a domestic political coalition that demands visible victories. The United States is attempting to project power through proxies, including Kurdish forces, which Wilkerson calls dangerously naive for believing in American guarantees, drawing a direct parallel to the Hmong people of Vietnam, who trusted Washington and were abandoned. Their protection turned into a death sentence. The economic calculation underneath all of this runs through the Strait of Hormuz. A successful Iranian blockade could triple oil prices in a matter of days. The geopolitical calculation is even darker. Every broken promise pushes Iran deeper into the arms of China and Russia, both of which are actively supplying Tehran with the technology to neutralize Western sanctions and upgrade Iranian military systems. The trust deficit that Washington has built over decades is not recoverable through ultimatums, and Wilkerson does not pretend otherwise. 5 radars destroyed. America and Israel are now flying blind. One of the most operationally significant moments in Lawrence Wilkerson's analysis is his account of Iran destroying 5 United States and Israeli early warning radar systems. This is not a footnote. This is a turning point in the conflict that reshapes every military calculation going forward. Iran took out 5 radars. Well, those radars cost between $500 million and $1 billion apiece, Wilkerson says, pausing for effect before continuing. And the pause is deliberate, because the number matters. These are not generic surveillance assets. They are integrated into layered missile defense architectures, including the THAAD complex and the Patriot system, both of which are now operating at degraded capacity. The strikes hit bases in Jordan, Qatar, and Bahrain, including the headquarters of the United States Fifth Fleet, where the damage paralyzed operations for the better part of a week. The tactical consequence is immediate and severe. Where the United States and Israel previously had 15 to 30 minutes of warning time before incoming strikes, they now have somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes. At that window, any defense becomes reactive and largely symbolic. The United States and Israel are now blind, Wilkerson says, and he is not using the word metaphorically. He adds the operational detail that makes this worse. The radar kills were carried out primarily by drones, less expensive, harder to detect than ballistic missiles, and extraordinarily effective at stripping away air defense coverage before subsequent missile salvos arrive. It is a sequenced approach. Blind the defender first, then send in the weapons that cannot be stopped. The propaganda dimension here deserves its own examination. The Pentagon has repeatedly claimed intercept rates of approximately 90%. Wilkerson dismisses this as a deliberate fabrication, pointing to video footage showing drones reaching their targets without encountering any meaningful resistance whatsoever. The political motive for inflating intercept statistics is obvious, but the military consequence of believing your own lie is potentially existential. From an economic standpoint, the damage is cumulative and slow to repair. These radar systems are produced at a rate of roughly 1 to 2 units per year. Replacing 5 of them is a years-long proposition that costs billions, and those are billions being spent while the United States federal deficit is already at historically alarming levels. Wilkerson's warning about escalation risk without radar coverage is not rhetorical. Without early warning infrastructure, any incoming attack becomes a surprise attack. And surprise attacks at this level of tension carry a direct path to nuclear response options. Iran controls the strait, oil, power, and the global choke point. The Strait of Hormuz has been a talking point in Middle East policy discussions for decades. Under Lawrence Wilkerson's current analysis, it has stopped being a theoretical risk and started being an operational reality. Iran is exerting control over the strait, displacing United States naval assets and creating operational paralysis that is already feeding into global energy markets. They control the Strait of Hormuz. They are pushing our fleet back, Wilkerson states without qualification. The downstream effects are already being measured in oil price indexes and shipping insurance premiums. If Iran moves from partial leverage to full blockade, the price shock would not be incremental, it would be a cliff edge. This connects to the broader resource war that Wilkerson traces through the entire conflict. Every actor in this theater is making calculations based on hydrocarbon control, from Mediterranean gas fields to Gulf shipping lanes. The United States is not in this region for abstract democratic values. The colonel has never pretended otherwise, and he is not starting now. Iran is waiting. The ground invasion they are not afraid of. In what is perhaps the most chilling moment of his entire analysis, Wilkerson walks through an interview with Iran's foreign minister on the question of a potential United States ground invasion. The question posed to the minister was direct. Are you afraid of a United States invasion of your country? The answer was 4 words: no, we are waiting. Wilkerson does not dismiss this as bravado. He treats it as a strategic signal backed by evidence, and he unpacks what waiting means in practice. Iran has spent decades upgrading its missile capabilities, improving its drone doctrine, and building layered defensive infrastructure that accounts for lessons learned in every previous conflict. The minister went further. We are confident we can repel them, and it will turn into a great catastrophe for them. To put Iran's military culture into context, Wilkerson invokes the Iran-Iraq War, a conflict in which Iran absorbed somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 military deaths, and did not surrender. The United States provided Iraq with chemical weapons precursors during that war. Iran survived anyway. The Iranians lost more soldiers in that war than we lost in Korea, Vietnam, and every other military campaign over the last 71 years combined, Wilkerson says, his voice carrying visible frustration. The implicit accusation is pointed. American military planners have consistently underestimated Iranian resolve by treating Iranians as something less than full strategic actors, a cognitive failure that has cost the United States enormously in every regional engagement since the 1970s. The behind-the-scenes dynamic Wilkerson highlights here is the mismatch of patience. Iran's strategic culture is built on long-time horizons. Trump's political calendar is built on election cycles and donor satisfaction. The colonel specifically names Sheldon Adelson-style mega-donor politics and the MAGA coalition as forces pushing Trump toward impulsive decisions that serve domestic political optics at the expense of strategic coherence. On the industrial side, the capacity gap is damning. The United States no longer has the manufacturing base to sustain a prolonged high-intensity conflict. Weapons production is lagging behind consumption rates. 40% of the THAAD batteries have been neutralized. Patriot missile inventory has dropped below 600 units at a moment when commanders are estimating they need thousands. And internally, the United States military command structure is experiencing friction between the Central Command and the Indo-Pacific Command over asset allocation, a bureaucratic turf war happening in real time during active combat operations. Tel Aviv under fire, cluster munitions, and the weapons nobody can stop. The strikes on Tel Aviv are real, they are ongoing, and Israeli media is not showing viewers the full picture. Lawrence Wilkerson says that directly and cites censorship as the mechanism. Domestic news management designed to prevent the Israeli public from understanding the actual scope of the damage being inflicted on their infrastructure. Iran's tactical approach involves deliberate saturation, older missile systems sent in first to exhaust interceptor capacity, followed by advanced munitions including what Wilkerson describes as cluster warhead systems that convert into ground-level mines on impact. Against these weapons, conventional air defense offers no meaningful protection. These are submunition warheads, explosive yields between 4 and 9 kilograms apiece, and there is no defense against them, Wilkerson states with provocative directness. The implication is that Israel is absorbing damage its population has not been fully informed about, and the political consequences of that information gap becoming public are unpredictable. Russia's involvement at this layer of the conflict goes beyond diplomatic support. Wilkerson cites Russian intelligence sharing and air defense assistance as a direct factor in confirmed kills of United States and Israeli aircraft. We don't know exactly which air defense systems were involved, but 5 F-15 fighters were shot down in 3 days, he notes, with a tone that suggests the number should alarm anyone paying attention. China, meanwhile, is supplying components for drones and missiles through third-country procurement channels specifically designed to stay under sanction radar. The economic arithmetic here points in one direction. United States missile stocks are approaching critical depletion. The gap between what is being consumed in this conflict and what is being produced at current factory capacity cannot be closed quickly. There is no surge option ready to execute. 3 scenarios, from exhaustion to catastrophe. Lawrence Wilkerson does not offer a single prediction for how this ends. He offers 3, and none of them are comfortable. Scenario 1. Prolonged war. Iran has the patience and the preparation to grind the United States down, the same way the Afghan and Iraqi theaters eventually broke American strategic will. The endpoint in this scenario is a United States withdrawal, significant loss of regional influence, and a domestic political crisis driven by the combination of casualties, economic costs, and the visible failure of an unwinnable campaign. Scenario 2. Ground invasion. If the United States commits land forces to Iran, Wilkerson's assessment is unambiguous. It becomes a catastrophe. Casualties in the hundreds of thousands, a destroyed economy, an oil shock that sends the global financial system into recession, and an insurgency that could run for a decade or more. We tried air superiority in Iraq and Afghanistan. We thought it was enough. It was never enough, he says, referencing the historical pattern with obvious frustration. Scenario 3. Diplomatic collapse leading to nuclear escalation. Without any foundation of trust remaining, negotiations cannot function. Iran deepens its alliance with Russia and China. The West faces geopolitical isolation as European partners, already rattled by the energy crisis, begin peeling away from the American coalition. In a worst-case evolution of this scenario, Wilkerson does not rule out a path to nuclear exchange, particularly if Iran, facing existential military pressure, chooses unconventional escalation. We are in for a nasty surprise if we think the Iranians are going to fold, Wilkerson concludes, with no softening, no diplomatic hedge, and no suggestion that he might be wrong. The Pentagon is lying to the public. The intercept numbers are fiction. The industrial base is not there. And the people making these decisions have convinced themselves they are dealing with an inferior opponent. They made that mistake in Vietnam. They made it in Iraq. They are making it again. And this time, the consequences are on a different scale entirely. That is where Lawrence Wilkerson leaves it. No reassurance, no silver lining, no comfortable exit from the analysis. The Colonel spent decades inside the architecture of United States foreign policy. He knows how these decisions get made and who benefits from the decisions being wrong. Subscribe to the channel and stay close, because the next update from this region is not going to be easier to hear. Your support is what keeps this kind of reporting alive.